I'm excited to sort of share a little bit about our digital transformation journey and how we went about getting to board for initially our sales and merchandising planning. So as I was hearing some of that conversation just now, a lot of that was similar to what we have been going through and what we're starting with. So just a little background on Swim USA. We are, a family-owned, fourth-generation company. It's been around since 1936. We are a swimwear designer, manufacturer, and distributor at this point. And we're just moving into retail, so we're also becoming a retailer. And I like to explain that we are one big corporate entity that really has 11 small businesses underneath it. So they all run their own different way. They all have their own Excel templates, their own needs, and own ways to go. And then they run it all like, a small business would instead of a large enterprise. I think our three most notable brands, some people may know them, some may not. We have Vitamin A. That's really been a hit in California with a lot of the celebrities. We have Miracle Suit and Magic Suit are our two other top lines. And I think as our mission statement really goes, sorry, and I should have switched to that one. I forgot about it. I was controlling it. Right? I forget that I'm controlling it. Yeah, I'm used to people doing it for me. And I think like our mission statement sort of says, and it's something that has changed very recently, is the fact that we are looking now for technology to really solve a lot of our improvements and doing continuous improvement, where they didn't need this 5-10 years ago. They were just a wholesaler. Things were completely different, and the environment was completely different than where it's at now. So just a little bit about myself. I've been with Swim USA since January 2023, but I've been in IT for about 25 years. I've done anything from financial services at GMAC Mortgage, and probably from 2005 on, I've been doing a lot of consulting or being a CTO in companies like that are distributors or manufacturers or retailers. So sometimes I might consult for like a Honeywell or a Tupperware. I may also work for a company like Bobcat. So like many different opportunities that I've been across. And interesting enough, Swim USA, like I'd never had an apparel customer when I was in e-commerce consulting, so it was just kind of a weird fit. I went from managing a company that sold tires to swimsuits, so a little bit different of a track. So really, a lot of what we see when you talk about challenges in the market that we have, and then even challenges in our business, is primarily around our retail buyers. We're noticing they have robust analytics, right? So they are running tools like a Walmart, a Target, Kohl's, Macy's. The planners have these robust tools. They're able to really fine-tune what they're buying, and then they're buying smaller bulk orders up front, and then continuously rebuying. And then we have demand volatility that, as they're not selling through a lot of the items they bought, they may return to vendor on some of that stuff, or the next order may be completely different sizes that we're ready to cut. And then, the other part too, right? We have a D2C market. Like I said, we're slowly becoming a retailer. So that market is really untapped for us, but we're not evolved and ready for that yet. So we're taking baby steps, whether it's the marketplaces or our own websites that we're trying to drive traffic to. And I think, the bigger thing and the challenge in the business, the organization really wasn't ready for, this kind of platform still when we first started talking about it about a year and 2 months when I first started. They were really based and really hoping to continue the Excel model, that I would come in with some crazy macro solution and all these things we could layer on top, right? And hope that we could do something with that. But I was like, no, we need to get out of that kind of method and really move into something like I call it Excel hell, right? Everything in that company is run through Excel, so we're slowly transitioning away. And I think the other thing too, as I said back earlier, we sort of act like a small business, but we are a large, organization, large enterprise. But our budget, like foresight, looks like our investment, we should spend 10K on this. I'm like, no, that's the wrong approach. We're not going to move forward fast enough. So a lot of people ask me, especially if they call up now, like, hey, how do you get executive buy-in for investment, especially when we have a family-owned company, it's on the 4th generation at this point. How do we do that? So we used a couple things, right? So we had, once we got, and we'll talk about how we got the board in a little bit in the software selection process, but once we selected board and we knew we were going to work with TPC, they had a 5-week fast start process. That really was going to enable us to understand and really prove out what I'll call a proof of concept on how we could move forward and show them some real tangible results with our own data. And really, I think the other part too is really showing too where we could move much further past just sales and merchandising planning, whether it's demand planning, our inventory, our assortment execution, our cut decisions that go to our factories for production. So with that, we went through that software selection process. We had an 8-week process where I pulled in different stakeholders across the business. Like I said, we have 11 different divisions, so I had 11 different stakeholders that I had to satisfy on top of like the CFO and the finance teams. And we went through a process where there was probably 15 that I pulled from the Gartner Magic Quadrant, did some research. We narrowed it down to 4 that we thought we were comfortable with, right? We narrowed it down to board, Anaplan, Blue Cherry, which is our ERP, and then ClickCloud, which is our analytics tool. So we already started moving somewhat towards a way of transforming with Click, but we didn't get all the way there, right? We didn't solve a lot of the data challenges. So ultimately, we did select board through the process, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we got to knowing that that was going to be the platform for us. But really going into it, we thought Anaplan was going to be the one. It came recommended internally. Some people had used it, and we really were like, okay, it looks awesome, Anaplan, for sales and merchandising, right? But what about FP&A? What about we tie it to the rest of the business? What about supply chain, right? And that's where the value of board really started coming through. So getting that executive buy-in, we had to do 2 things that I realized pretty quickly starting. I had to show them ROI, right, which is pretty common with a lot of them, and I had to actually try to prove it, which sometimes I can just put it on paper and talk my way through it. This time I actually had to prove a little bit, show some, because I was dealing with the CFO and the executive vice president of finance. So I came up and I really sat with the teams and understood where their challenges were, right? It was taking them some 3 days, maybe 5 days in some cases, to pull all the data from all our sources, whether we exported data out of Click, whether we exported it directly out of the ERP. I think somebody asked a question earlier. We got retail seller data that's coming in through an EDI pipeline. So like they're pulling that in, they're copy and paste, and they're doing all this crazy stuff with it. And I'm like, look, we can get to taking that down to probably 1 hour where somebody can actually do the analysis, work through it by going this route. So that was kind of an easy sell. The other one that I saw that was really easy for me to prove out was when we come up with data entry errors. So like I said, we're copying and pasting. Sometimes they grab data from a wrong sheet. They grab it from an older, last month's data instead of this month's data, anything like that. But I was starting to grab and see and capture some of that. And really what was happening, they were sometimes reporting in our strat planning that, we might need to rebuy on this fabric. But they had the wrong data, they made the wrong entry or something. So we came up with a formula that calculated out to about 15% savings we were going to have. And then I also say, okay, that's great, we're going to save the company money, but how are my users going to react, right? Are they going to adopt it? The organization has been around for a while. A lot of our employees are been with us for 20 plus years. They only know, some of them are still up there with green bar paper writing out some of their things because they don't trust this system, the computer. So how are we going to really prove that out? And that came from just talking through and say, hey, I'm going to reduce your time and effort by being able to consolidate all of our data sources into one data warehouse, right? We didn't have that. They were hungry for a solution like that. Some of the sales leaders have come from bigger organizations that were used to that, and they weren't getting that support. So I said, okay, we can get to that level pretty easily. Then the next was, we want to get really into that organized wide planning department, right? Instead of having 11 different kind of planners, all within inside of a sales team, which really isn't the right spot, we can now move to one organized wide, centralized system where we'll have maybe 2 or 3 planners that are covering all 11 brands. So as I promised, a little bit of how we got to in our software selection, and just some of the areas went through. Now I will point out, right, it's kind of a sticking you right in the face. It's in yellow. Board came out with all 5s. Now that was not on purpose, right? Like I remember I said, Anaplan was where we were leaning towards to begin with, and this all came out from our real scoring, right? Like we went through these about 16 different questions that we had in the survey across those 4 buckets, and when it came down to it, the users really saw the user friendliness of the platform, how easy it was going to be for them to refine and build with it. All the different forecasting tools. For me, from an IT side, I was looking at it from the security model. How well can I restrict data? The owners are very conscientious about who sees what brand divisions, who sees what cost, right? So we were able to lock down a lot of that. And then the requirements, it just almost checked off every box that we had. So once we get started, right, so we got through that, almost bought in, right? So at that point they committed to, all right, we're gonna go ahead and get the board software. Then we'll do this fast start process. But at this point we don't know what we're getting into from an implementation, right? So what is that gonna look like? So TPC came in, had this, this 5-week process that really set us up for where we're at now. So it came in really to show that proof, that proof of concept that we wanted to show, to get a little deeper into with our data, and also really look at what it's going to be from our roadmap. Where do we need to start, right? And they had that 4 steps here, like scoping, identify, define, and plan. So we needed to work through that in order to present what we needed to do. With that, we ultimately came out with our roadmap, and we sort of purposely landed on these phases in the order they are, and that was very strategic for a reason. Now we would not start this way in a year, right? We wouldn't start with assortment execution, refining our master assortment, and cut decisions usually up front. We're starting with our initial merch sales projections. We're doing the master assortment definition of what maybe sold very well at the last market we were at, and then what fabric and capacity we might need. But it happened to be that phase 1 is the time of year we're in right now, where we're just trying to analyze and continue in looking how our sales are doing. So phase 1 is where we've started with assortment execution and that refining the master assortment. By the time we get to quarter 4, this is lined up for us to do much more of that implementation where we're planning for 2026. So that's going to be the key for us. And that's where the teams are they're kind of hung up a little because they're like, why are we starting backwards? And like, why are we there? But we're like, look, we're trying to get you used to the tool, introduce some of the concepts that you're using now, get some value from it, and then let's go full bore when you have the 2026 going. And I think as we talk and wrap up, with final thoughts on that, a lot of what the team really liked, right? Again, I said that was the user friendliness, the ability for us to have ready-to-use data because we are pulling that in from so many different sources as opposed to just, maybe some spreadsheets or, whatever they got in the refresh data, maybe they pull a monthly report, whatever it is. So we're getting to that point of that ready-to-use data. Then also getting them to a tool that is really capable of that ad hoc analysis, right? That they can build on top of whatever models we have built out, and then continue that planning that they might have done in Excel. And the ultimate reason why that's really important too is not only do we do our initial strategic planning for 2026, every month they have to then sit in front of the leaders of the company and say, here's how we're performing, here's how it's going. So they're doing that that process of 3 to 5 days every month to get their data. So it was really time consuming. So they're really looking forward to us getting into there. Unfortunately, I'm fighting off operations and finance because they want to get into the solution, but we're not ready for them yet. The other part too, right, that going to a one-stop shop is going to be huge for us. So I said everybody uses different solutions. I found that some people were using Airtable, some people had Excel, some were just using what was in the ERP, which wasn't very robust. Some were just using the data in our Click environment. So we had a very disparate type of information, and people never know where to go. When a new person comes into the organization, that's probably the hardest part, is introducing them to the correct way of how to work. So this is where Board will really come in and help us from that one-stop shop type of solution. And I think the other thing too is it is really flexible what we've seen in the model so far, and sort of the most important part that I've noticed and that we're really focusing on is that data hierarchy, right? I really need to make sure our data is being fed in correctly and that the hierarchy is, really is set up in the proper way so we can continue to scale this out. And that's the hardest part with this company because there's so many data sources. There was no true data warehouse. So we are not necessarily building one now. Board is allowing us to really funnel in many datas without having a data warehouse. And that's it. So that's questions. That's my email. If you have any questions, reach out. If you want to have a discussion about anything, you'll notice I leave out social media links because ever since I've joined as a VP, I get relentless people from sales reaching out to me trying to sell and pitch me their solutions. So I've had to hide myself. Yeah, right. I had to hide myself. I think. Oh, but you probably search my name, you'll find me somewhere. Go ahead.
So, based on the conversation we had in the morning sessions with AI and that component, do you guys have, and maybe this is a question you're just realizing today, or an idea, is that something you think you're going to incorporate into your plan in the future? Are you guys going to start doing any predictive or anything like that?
So that's been a big part of the push since I came in too, is let's make sure we're leaning into how we're going to do machine learning. Let's do some predictive, right? Let's take a lot of the analysis work that we can do that's pretty much, it's the same kind of analysis as long as we pick the method and be consistent. So it's something we leaned in on, and I thought that was very good. It was like really reinforcing what I've been pitching, and now knowing that that's going to be part of the platform, they also made me look really good because I was pushing hard on that and saying we were going to be, we were going down that route. All right, any other questions? Yeah. Yeah.
So who's managing the tool?
So at Swim USA, it's kind of an odd arrangement. Since they don't have a lot of technical people, it's myself and one of my business systems analysts that are managing it. We also manage all the data feeds coming out. We did bring in some people that we call our data governance team. We brought them inside of IT so that I could manage them and do that as well. Just so happens I report to the CFO as well, so that sort of works out in the same manner for us.
How many brands do you guys actually, like third-party brands?
Third-party brands, we are probably over 50 at this point. So the interesting thing about that is because we have 50 plus brands, some of that might be the same exact swimsuit that we sell to Walmart, to Target, to Macy's, but it'll have a different brand label on it. So in the back end, we've really then got to aggregate like, all right, this style is really moving well. And the price points are all different, right? You walk in to buy that swimsuit at Walmart, it's probably 50% less than if you walked into a Macy's or Nordstrom. So those are definitely a lot of what happens there. And then we have a lot of our own retail brands.
Secret's out.
Secret's out, yeah. Yeah, it's almost like I used to say when I worked in furniture too, it was the same thing. Like I could tell you, you could go to the top end store or the low end store, all you're paying for is just the label and the branding because it's all made in the same factory over overseas. So, and it's the same thing with all the swimsuits. A lot of it comes down to designs too, like our price points on our own brands that we sell for retail, like our Vitamin A, Miracle Suit, Magic Suit. Those have a much higher price point because they are only ours. You can't get them anywhere else. Although there's a lot of knockoffs. We're constantly looking out on Amazon and trying to get our patents protected. But for the most part, we do a pretty good job at that.
And any large brands that you guys manage too? Like third party?
Yeah, so I think this is one of the things that's going to help us continue, I think, to do that. But we manage all the swimsuits for Ralph Lauren. So anything if you see a Ralph Lauren swimsuit on the women's side and even kids stuff, that is all coming from us. We're partnering with them to design, so they've got to put their stamp on it, but then we're manufacturing it. And then we're pushing that out to just the approved channels, but we're really then now pushing that to marketplaces because we've noticed that retail buying pattern from Macy's, like they took everything off the floor. They used to be huge floor of swimsuits just with all the Swim USA stuff. They said, you know what, we're going to push you to the marketplace. We don't want to use that floor space anymore. So we had to rapidly change this year. And Ralph Lauren was one of the big impacts we had, but it's done very well on their marketplace.
And is that something that when you come in sort of future state as you move through this, you can then maybe get more of those brands like Ralph Lauren?
Right, yeah, like sort of we lost the Reebok license years ago because we weren't able to give them the corporate reporting that they wanted to say, what's our forecast look like, right? Right now, I think it takes the Ralph Lauren team a week to put together the corporate report they need to give to Ralph Lauren. By the time we get done then with board, it'll be down to probably a 2-day cycle where they're just validating and making sure the data is good, and hopefully it'll get less and less time as the team gets comfortable with the tool.
So could you, with the board is here, I'm wondering, what did you find helpful in learning board, in getting to know board, the community? What is it that, or what would you like to see?
Yeah, I think from our team so far, the board training that we've been able to do online has been fantastic, right? Like myself and Anthony, who are on my business systems analysts, we were able to grasp a lot of the concepts. It has helped us as we help build the data models with TPC. Like we had to really go through it. If we would have tried to jump in without it, we would have been like, what are you asking for? And we would have probably went through 5 or 6 iterations of it because our data wasn't as clean. But going through it, we understood, all right, now we know how we need to model this data a little differently than we might like in Click. So those were the things I think were the biggest impact. But so far we're seeing too, like the help documentation has been really good. I'm excited to hear a lot of other things that we heard about today that might even help us further with that, because we really lack with documentation at our company of how to do processes.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave.
Okay.